Bobby Matos and his Afro-Latin jazz ensemble with Miles Davis's 1959 triumph on blue. Matos did this version in honor of Davis's uh, initial version, or original version, and he introduced the Latin version, this Latin version, in his 2006 album, Gratitude. This is Leid Stories. I'm Utrice Leid. And let's get started right away at 888-874-4888. We're talking about the reality we're living in right now. What the heck is going on in this country? What do you think it's all about? What do you discern as startling for you and for others? And what should we do about all of this? I don't want to tell you what to talk about, but I'm suggesting, because I do have a long list of topics we haven't gotten to yet. But because of the way things are going these days, constantly changing, literally from minute to minute, what concerns you? That, I think, is a very good place to start our conversation. What is it that concerns you in this moment of our collective existence? Where are we going? What is this leading us to? And are we in sync at all with our leadership and vice versa? I don't know where things are going. I know that they're just changing and changing a lot from day to day. I am not seeing really a coherent, and who am I to insist on coherence at a time like this, as if it has any application in Trump's world. But I'm not seeing a coherence in terms of strategy and response. Maybe you have an idea, maybe you have seen it, and therefore we can begin to train our eyes on that. But it would be very helpful about this time if people can get a message, a sense, not only of what is happening, but what is being organized as a response, and whether there's room for us to be part of the response, or is it just shut up and wait, and then you'll know what the response ought to be. Just shut up and wait. I don't like that kind of response. And I have deep concern about how this so far is being handled, because it's really more being reacted to, and that is not a response. A response is something that you plan. You can see where the other side is going, and you respond accordingly. That is a deliberate effort that you have to make, and we need to see more of that. That there is some kind of a response, an organized response on the part of the Democrats that looks like it also includes the concerns of all the people. I'm not seeing that it is working out that way so far. So maybe I'm not seeing things right. Ma'at, you start us off today from New York.
Yes, greetings to the beloved family. A little bit more awake today. I think, especially after observing what happened, the double cross of the Kurds, where they were just completely blindsided. They didn't get any notice, and they've been through this these instances before with the U.S., and I've been thinking about the fact that they're an acknowledged stateless people. But so are we. So are people of color. I mean, when you think about our overall situation, okay, so we pay taxes, but the police, even into our homes now, come and shoot us down. They just are entitled to pull that trigger, ask questions later, and it's on and on. I was thinking about Laquan McDonald. I mean, he was 50 yards or so away, and, they just pumped the bullets in his back. So we need to deal with the fact that we are essentially a stateless people, but unacknowledged. And I don't have any easy answers. I think David also gives a good analysis, but I think once we recognize or acknowledge how dire the situation is, that maybe we could come up with some, at least trying to come together, because that's a big part of the problem too. We do our own things and can't
Well,
connect in many ways.
well, I accept your précis today, your short form, um, but it really is something that we need to be talking about. We have people who are talking as if they're representing a a good uh, percentage of people out here, but not really. They're talking about things that are of interest to them. We need to get our act together and figure out what is it that we're going through. We don't know yet. We have no
And,
name for it.
exactly. And what are
So,
we going to do about it?
well, thanks for getting us started today. Lincoln from New York, you're on the air.
Hey, you, Trace.
Hello, Lincoln. What's up?
Yeah, how are you? Yeah.
Okay.
Um, just want to tabulate some of the things that's concerning me. One is the oversimplification of everything that's going on. The people knowingly selective of the facts. People allowing themselves to be played by all sides. And I wanted, and we talk about this, so we choose to talk about facts in absence of context. Like, for example, the Kurds. The Kurds were used by the CIA. And when Donald Trump first came in, he said that he was going to pull out of that area in 4 months. It's been now it's way past 4 months. The Kurds were used to kill Syrians. They were used in the attempt to destabilize Assad. So there's no reason for us to be so sympathetic towards them. I want to also, I wish I had time to break all of these things down. I want to make a note about how everyone is about power grabbing. Look at this wild claim by Hillary Clinton. She's so hungry for power. She is gonna call one of the Democratic aspirees a Russian asset, and it amazes me that people were not appalled by that. That people did not see that to be just as ridiculous as some of Trump's buffoonery and wild claims. Imagine, she's so hungry for power, she is going to refer to what's her name of Hawaii as a Russian asset.
Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard.
Pardon? Yeah, Tulsi. Right.
Gabbard.
And people seem to be so oblivious to this. It also appalls me how.
But here's the thing I would like you to do. What, in the panoramic sense, do you see is happening?
What in a panoramic sense do I see? What
is happening? What is happening?
I think we're all playing as followers of fools, and we're all blind, and we're all the blind following the blind. and we're all selectively choosing what we want to believe and what we don't want to believe. We want to hear sweet lies, whether it's being told by the Democrats, um, what do you call it, progressives. I mean, look at something as crazy as now it's becoming fashionable for men to cut off their sexual organs and for women to
But
suture this.
you're off of the mark.
Huh?
Let's stick to the point of your subject, the subject of your points. Let's do that, and so we don't
That's
flip
why
it
I
around
was
all
thinking
over
of
the
I was
place,
thinking of the
and
word
in
you
the end,
used.
we don't understand what is your comprehensive view.
We're in a state of madness, and the madness is not just the politicians; it's also the people. It's a total state of mental and spiritual breakdown, and we are we're just embracing what suits our own private agendas. You know,
Is
it's
there a solution
nobody's
in your
dealing.
view right now? Is
Pardon?
there a solution to what we are witnessing?
The solution is for us to really stop and take a long, slow, deep breath and say, we are going to really endeavor to be totally objective to a painful state where we can literally acknowledge truth, not just truth to suit ourselves, but to really, really, dissect, be able to say, painfully, this politician who I have deified is really a part of the problem. You know, this party that I have been so allegiant to is part of the problem. We have to stop compartmentalizing ourselves and saying, I'm this, I'm that, and start looking at things clearly, objectively, and divorced of some of all the blind subjective emotions. Because even in this forum, when I listen to people, they sound intelligent and they use fancy words. But then when I break it down, I see they are selectively choosing facts. Like even something like the Russian thing, it was a big lie. And I hear intelligent people in this audience keep saying those things. I see people ignoring truths like, you know,
But
Bush.
I don't. Here's the thing: if we can achieve this one thing today, this would be great. Let's not talk about what people are doing. I just want to know from you, objectively, what you see as being wrong or just not working the way it ought to work, and what is essentially the problem. What do you recommend as something that might work,
Okay,
given the situation we're in?
this is what I recommend. I recommend that we all come together and forget about, since we can't look at all the politicians objectively, let's say, you know what, we're not going to be about Trump or Bush or Obama, but we're going to be about creating a new system, and a system that is for the good of the people. Because you get rid of Trump, he's going to be replaced by another abuser of the people. So it's like we're like the dog chasing its tail. So I say, let's come together and sit down and say, let us, we the people, design a system like a referendum system where we the people vote on what should be or what should not be. That is the only solution. Otherwise, we're all fooling ourselves.
All right. Thanks for joining us today in conversation and putting some ideas on the table. 888-874-4888. It is very clear there's something dramatically wrong. And we've been talking about this ad infinitum. As a society, there is something profoundly wrong. It's just not working. And it's just not working for specific groups of people. It's not working in terms of the big picture. It's not working in terms of how individually what they do, what we do would fit or mesh with the larger picture because we don't know what the larger picture is. We are conjecturing. It's a intelligent conjecture, but we don't have a scientific approach to what is happening now. So we are constantly in reactive mode. We wait for the president to do something atrocious, even though we've been discussing Donald Trump's erratic behavior now for a long time, and still we act surprised when he basically, acts the way he is. So we have to have some other kind of way of thinking and doing. Gwen from New York, what would those things be?
Hi. First, I just wanted to address the last caller and say that, in fact, we do have a system that does work if we choose to have it work. I mean, I do think that our Constitution is a good Constitution. I think that some things can be added to it, but essentially, I think it's very good, and I think people put a lot of thought into trying to make it work for the times that it was. But I think one of the big things that's missing from all of this is our own behavior. When I have to go to work and talk to somebody for like an hour and try to convince them to vote on their own side, but I keep hearing, this one fellow kept trying to bring up a scenario of, what if I worked hard my whole life, and then one day I hit the lottery? His question was to me before he told me this story was, what do I think people should be taxed at that are millionaires? And I said 70%. And I think he almost fell off his chair. In the meantime, we're all struggling for our jobs right now. Barney's just went belly up. And, now everybody's running in the same direction to get the very few jobs that are there. But, listening to people speak, many people are part of the problem with their own mobsterized capitalistic views that are just common everyday folk. And that is because they have this unrealistic hope that someday their ship's going to come in. They're going to be the one that wins the lottery. And so it's all going to be worth it in the end because they're going to be up there with those billionaires. But that's very unrealistic. And I think that when I speak to a lot of people that I work with or just generally, there's always a little bit of, look the other way kind of stuff, when it comes down to criminal behavior or getting close to that line or, that kind of mafioso kind of attitude. And that's kind of new, I think, in America. I don't think that's something my parents had. I think that a lot of that might have to do with the heroization of very bad behavior that the media latched on to, and fed us as a steady diet, including greed. Greed is good. That's from the 1980s, and then we have perpetual ignorance, which purposely happened when George Bush Jr. Totally defunded public school and also recreated the criteria to literally cut out things like history courses. Well, this is really a problem. I meet people that are a lot younger than me, and they don't know. They literally do not know things that they should have been taught in junior high school. They went to public school. They graduated. Even I would say the bar has been substantially lowered for people to graduate from college because college has turned into just a money-making business. If you can pay, you can play. So what I want to say is I think that you have a system in place that works if you work it. And it's all over this country. I mean, we have protections for all kinds of things written into the law. But if you don't have anybody to enforce the law and be the teeth of the law, then you can't use these laws. You can't protect yourself. I'm talking about laws in regards to buildings and environmental racism. That's the kind of, I'm not talking about the police are coming to your house. I'm talking about, you don't have anybody to come out and actually enforce the law. So what I think that we should realize is many of the laws are on the books, but we don't have anyone that's willing to enforce them. We don't have politicians with a willingness to do what is right for the people. They have a willingness to do what is right for the bankers.
But Gwen, is there a shift? I agree with you, there is one. But is there a shift in terms of people committing to what they say they want? It seems to me they walked away from that, and we have wholesale individualism, which is not going to win any battles.
Yeah. But that's the thing about individualism. It ties very, very deeply into capitalism. And there's that thing called hope. Hope does spring eternal. And so, this is where you get the lotteries, and this is where you get, gambling as a really great way of saving a city. Look at Atlantic City. They were going to revive Atlantic City with gambling. I mean, can't think of anything worse. That was like building your house on a sand foundation. But what I'm trying to say is that we individually have to realize that we're not going to go too much further without a collective of people. And unfortunately, that takes a lot of hard lessons. That takes something like a depression to happen in order to have the willingness and the support of the people to get behind a government that will do something different. I mean, one thing I will say that I think is really interesting is that I know that I don't know whether you're too much a fan of Bernie's, and I want to make it clear that I'm not a gaga googa crazy, but to me, I get some help out of it.
Fan, I disagreed with and I made it clear why I disagreed the last time. I also made it clear that I think the alliance being formed between him and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is a very bright spot in all of this stuff.
Well, I think so too. And I went to see them the other day, and it's not the first time I've been to one of these rallies. But what I want to tell you, Treese, is I got to tell you, Aunt Gwen's been to a lot of rock and roll concerts, and I have never ever seen anything that fills up with the enormous amount of people, other than the Bernie Sanders rallies. And the other day when I went in, I could count the people that were my age. Very few people were my age and older that were there. Almost everyone was somebody that was a millennial. And, although I tear my hair out with a lot of the stuff with the millennials, I did find that it was extremely joyous to see that it was packed with these young kids, that they were listening, they were finding information, they were politically connected. So that somebody asked me, about all this the other day, who's really scared of Trump getting in again. And I said, you know what? I went out this weekend and I went to a Bernie Sanders rally and I got a big, gigantic cup of hope. And it was real hope. It wasn't that hopey, changey shit. I really felt it because it's in the air. And last night I watched him come on TV, and I've never seen any politician, except for Roosevelt, who has gotten a standing ovation by an audience. I mean, usually everybody, they will politely clap, but they do not stand up. And, on Jimmy Kimmel Live last night, he got this standing ovation. I myself am sitting in front of the TV clapping like some idiot at 11:30 at night, because for a little bit, I don't even know what he's going to do or if he can do what he says he's going to do. But it makes me feel like the log of horrors that's on my back right now, it might be lifted, because I really don't think this guy is in it for the money. He might make some mistakes. He might even die in office. But you know what? He'll put somebody there responsible to pick up the charge after him. And I can't tell you how utterly covered with the tar I feel listening to Trump. The everything he does is just so disgusting, and the feebleness and the weakness of the people around him that are supposed to be hauling his ass out, and I mean it. This guy has crossed the line so many ways.
I have to call you on 2 infractions. You got to watch our language.
Don't. When I get into the Trump thing, I get very upset. I'm sorry, but I think I'm not the only one. But like I said, I listened to Nancy Pelosi the other day after I heard Trump, and I thought this was also disappointing listening to her, because listening to her, first of all, if you're going to be reprimanding him, and as well you should be, and you should be on top of this thing. But I don't like that she calls him, President Trump, him, all the time instead of his name or Mr. Trump. She could just call him Mr. Trump, because I think that it starts to sound like we're having a family squabble here. This is not a family squabble. This is big. And you have to act totally professional, and you have to get him out of that office. That's your job. And so
All
far,
right.
I can count on my hand. No, I can't count. He's broken so many laws that I don't. What are we waiting for? Especially the last one was so brazen, in your face. I'm going to take the G7 to my hotel. It was in your face. That was the descriptions of the emoluments clause being broken. That was a key. Like, you could put that in the dictionary. This is the case, and this is how you break the law. And yet the Democrats are still like dragging their feet. They're still not going to get this done. And I'm wondering,
As are the Republicans. The Republicans should be so offended by the behavior of this president and daring to represent what republicanism is all about. Because I'd hear Republicans all the time talk about, the high ideals of the party and so forth. Okay, great. Who is backing that up? Who is saying this guy is out of line? This guy is not representing what Republican is to our understanding. We have to move on, but thank you so much for calling in today and adding to the conversation. David from Brooklyn, you're on the air.
Good afternoon, you trees.
Hello.
I hardly know where to start. There's so much material on the table. But I'll start from here. As I see it, the ruling class, and I say the ruling class, I emphasize that because they are the people that run the country. The country is not run by the masses, and we have to keep reinforcing that. The ruling class has reached the summit of Mount Everest. It has gotten to the point where they're putting everything in place to benefit themselves. They have the people in check. The people are absolutely in check. They've got them thinking and repeating this nonsense about them having a democracy, even though it is impossible to have a democracy when you're running a capitalist, imperialist empire that's all over the world. So there's no way you can say you're running a democratic system that benefits the people who live here while you're involved in empire. So people have to get that through their head. As I hear the people talk about the so-called Kurds being stateless, as far as I know, the Kurds are citizens of the countries where they're living. And they were used by the ruling class in its policy of overturning or trying to overturn certain countries in the last few years. And one of those countries was Syria. So, you see, we have to take that into consideration when people are talking about how it was a betrayal to let the Kurds go, and that makes me think about why is the United States in Syria in the first place. The Syrian government, the legal government of Syria, did not invite the United States to come into their country. And I hear, they're talking about the Russians being in Syria. But the Russians were invited by the Syrians. They were ally of the Syrians, and they have every right to be there if they were invited by that country. So, people have to put this thing in order. They have to understand that we're dealing with a ruling class that's running an empire that's all over the world. We were never a democracy. The Constitution was not made to create a democracy. And it is the ruling class that created this Constitution has reached Mount Everest because it has got the people at just where they want and is playing them very well. We have to understand that we will not easily get someone to be president of this empire who was against an empire. Even Bernie Sanders, what is his attitude towards having the empire? And we must be big fools if we think those who rule are going to allow someone to come in and dismantle the empire that is in effect today. It's not that way, no matter who the candidate is. It's not going to be someone that is going to put in a policy that would dismantle the empire that rules all over the world. All this nonsense about Russians going and meddling with the election and whatnot, that's laughable because the U.S. goes all over the world and meddles in everybody's elections and influences people on the basis of quid pro quo 24 hours a day by threatening people to take away certain benefits or threatening people with sanctions if they don't do so-and-so. And that's just routine action. So Trump going and telling the Ukrainians, well, look up what's going on with Biden and his son is nothing unusual in terms of the way the United States operates all over the world, North and South America, Asia, no matter where they go, they are involved in doing that. So this is a tremendous thing that we have to get through our head, that we're not living in democracy. This is a oligarchy and a plutocracy, and the ruling class rules, and they get you thinking that you're in a democratic situation where you have a situation of where everybody is treated fairly and you don't. So the way to do that is divide and conquer, and they're doing that well.
What does that put us then? What is the mandate by virtue of everything you've just said? What does the mandate demand of us? What should we be situating ourselves to do?
And learn what is going on. People are confused because they go to these schools and they are subjected to the corporate media. The ruling class owns the corporate media. They own the schools. They decide the curriculum, and so we have to get to the point where the people start surviving the media, radio, television, print, and surviving going to these schools. You cannot learn your history, the history of this country, by going to a public school. You have to study on your own. There's no way that you think that a person could learn American history by going into the normal public or private school there. They don't have history books that would teach the real history that they would give to the masses of people. You have to go and study on your own. And that's what we have to understand. people have to start studying on their own, and so they learn the system they're living in, and understanding that this big charade of Republicans and Democrats and all their rhetorical flourishes about what they're going to do, first of all, in terms of doing for the people, they can tell them anything, but as they win the election, for example, as president, you can just do what you want after you won the election, and Republican, Democrat, they're all in the same bag, even though they are different in certain ways. It's not going to win for you one way, Republican, or the other way, Democrat. It's not going to work.
Thanks a lot for your contribution, David. Very enlightening, as usual. We get to George from California next. You're on the air.
Hi, you, Trace.
Hello.
Oh, man, there's so much. What he was saying was one of the big things for me, and I think what I have to say is basically a summary of what he's saying. That, and I keep saying this, most people do not know what's going on. They didn't know what Clinton, what he did, Obama, you know about all this. And they don't know about the Hillary Clinton situation, which you talk about. Most people don't know what you talk about. And the person that actually went into the database at the Democratic National, what do they call it, DNC?
Yes, the DNC.
Got those emails and who he brought them to, and then Julian Assange exposed it. So right now, what concerns me the most, besides everyone not knowing most people not knowing what's going on, for the reasons that the other guy was saying, was what's going on with Julian Assange. The media is not going to cover it. The New York Times can make their readers be aware of the injustice that's going on and many other things. But on Gary's show today, the last half of it, he talked about what's going on with Julian Assange's hearing. And these things really, this is the biggest concern I have, because the whistleblowers are the ones that the government goes after. The whistleblowers are the ones that are trying to tell people what's really going on. Edward Snowden. I'm living here with my ex-girlfriend, and I try to tell her what's going on. She watches CNN and ABC and NBC, but she won't look at, listen, or read anything I tell her. It's amazing. And then I hear her talking to people on the phone and her little arguments, but it's incredible. So what's happening with Julian Assange, I'm afraid he's going to be ending up executed, because the hearing in England was a big sham. Maybe there'll be other hearings as the case goes up the ladder. But so far, oh man, everyone should listen to at least the last half of Gary's show. And beyond that, he talks about the situation with the government and the media and everything. He ties it all together. It's like everything we're all talking about, but I like the way he kind of sums things up, and he goes deep into what's really going on. And before I started listening to him, I didn't know probably even a fraction of all these things. So I'm afraid of what's going to happen to Julian Assange, because he was exposing a lot. He exposed a lot of crimes that Hillary Clinton had done, which is the basis for this big problem with Julian, because I think she's behind all of this, getting him extradited from England, and I think she wants to make an example. Don't say things that
you can't prove.
What's that?
Try not to say things that you cannot prove.
Like what?
like she's behind all of this. She's behind all of the moves against Assange. And let me just say one word about Assange and the Assanges of the world. As much as people are concerned about them, you have to always keep in mind they understood from the beginning what they were up against. It didn't deter them. That's the work they saw themselves as being cut out to do, and they did it. They continued to do it. So when we express, I think they're going to kill him. I think they're going to break him mentally. I think they're going to do all of that. Expect all of that. What you have to hold on to is that despite all the things that people of that ilk face, they continue. And they don't express fears that, oh, they're going to kill me. They know that. They know it very well.
But the sad part of it is that with all the exposure, a lot of people don't even listen to it. Like Edward Snowden.
But you can't worry. At some point, you cannot worry about these things. You cannot worry. You can't worry about that percentage that isn't doing something. Instead, you look to those people who are doing something. We've spent a lot of time and resources and involvement with people who are not doing anything. We try to convert them or convince them. You're wasting your time. You work with, they're small groups, but they're there.
But when your callers talk about this is what we need to do, things like that, what we need to do, the we is a very small minority because most people don't know anything. And unless a lot of people have the information, I can't see that much is going to be done with just a few people. It's the media. I think that's the crux of the problem.
The thing is, it's everybody. It's the media, it's us, it's other people too. And what the other side is very successful at is getting us to run after the small speck and not allow us to see the big picture right in front of us. The big picture is right in front of us all the time. And we will ignore that and go hunting for the little speck, thinking that that's more significant. It isn't. We have to retrain ourselves.
Would you say the big picture is that most people don't know?
No, I can't say that. I haven't seen some kind of indication, study, or whatever. I haven't. I'm just going by what's in my immediate community and what I know.
Oh, I see it all the time. My ex-girlfriend has a friend in Washington who works with a big TV station there. Actually, she writes up the news. And I had a talk with her, and that told me a lot, that she really didn't know what was going on, because I asked her about, what about this, what about that? She didn't know.
But
I would think a person like that would know about these things.
We have to back off a little bit and say, we expect people to know things. Since when? We can't expect, you should know this and you should know that. How should I know?
But you can't expect any action to be taken by us if most of us doesn't even know it exists.
Well, the thing is, we have a lot of work to do. We have been living with very bad habits, and they are now firmly entrenched. We don't know how to undo the bad habits we have inculcated and which we are very comfortable with.
Yeah.
We're very comfortable.
One
So
point I wanted
we
to
have to
make here
change a
was,
lot of it. We
oh,
have
go
to move
ahead.
on because we're running out of time. But I want to thank you so much for calling and contributing today. Thanks a lot, George. Ron from Connecticut, you're on the air.
Hi.
Hello.
A few calls ago, a gentleman finished with a solution which involved something about the mechanics of public referendum, and I feel that he intuitively understands, if not fully consciously, like a lot of us, that the legislature is unable to show the executive the will of the people. You know what I mean? They've been compromised. The powers that be bought them a long time ago. So they can't express the will of the people. I guess that's the word I was looking for, express. The people have to take over the job of the legislature. How do we get back?
That's a long process. That's a long and arduous process.
We need some.
I'm sorry.
We need an ethical constitutional lawyer to tell us exactly what the procedurally how to get back the constitutional rights that we lost because of the laws passed right after 9/11, Patriot Act, and then later on the National Defense.
That's a long-term project.
But
I want to know, what are people prepared to do to change things next week? What are you prepared to do?
Boycott and divest.
Yeah, but boycott and divest also takes time. I'm saying, how do you intend to change things next week?
Next week, okay. Again, starting with a constitutional lawyer who can explain to us how we lost our rights and how we can exercise public referendum on all three levels of government to get these things back.
So you just answered the question. We can't change things next week. We don't want to change next week?
Was that a rhetorical?
No, the thing is, this is the nature of our existence. We have an urgency in so many ways, staring us down the face. We have no time. People don't understand that. We've run out of time.
Like David said, I'm at a loss here. Two things happened after 9/11. We lost our civil rights, and the office of the president gained a lot of power, like the power to just declare war unilaterally without consulting the will of the people. So how do we reverse those? All right, what David said is educate. So that's something we can do in a week. We can talk to people on the street.
How do you educate? You have to demonstrate.
Okay.
People have to see the possibilities of what it is you're talking about. You could talk Paul and preach Saul, but until you can deliver a product, and they would say, "Oh, that's what you're talking about." Yeah. That's good. That's good for us. For a simple thing might be forming a guard from school to home for children. It doesn't take much organizing to do that. You don't have to consult a lawyer and all of that stuff to find out if you're doing okay. Just people from the neighborhood making sure the children cross the street. And I know there are people who are there to do that as a job, but you're expressing the concern of the neighborhood that children should see people from their neighborhoods helping them go home safely.
So
very simple things.
You do that, you accomplish that through an ethical town council? I mean, corruption is the big problem. Gwen said we have got a great
I'll give you something that I think is doable. You tell me the first reaction is, that's an interesting idea. Your first reaction is, that's not going to work.
It has to start locally. I agree with you about that. But in one sense,
here's another idea, and I've been talking about it for years. Sweep up your block. Clean it up.
That should be done simultaneously with the big stuff. You can't just start there.
It's not. This is big stuff. To sweep up and clean up your block is big stuff. You see, that's what I mean.
Yes, I agree with you. Can I give you an example of what I'd like to happen next week? I'd like for Tulsi Gabbard to add these things to her platform.
Well, you've been pushing Chelsea Gabbard. What is it with you? Are you her campaign manager?
She's the only one who's got a decent platform. She's the only one who has a decent platform in terms of.
Yeah, but that's for other people to decide. That's not for you to decide.
Well,
let other people decide that, and
they have to be informed, like David said. They've got to be educated.
Please trust that they're able to understand that, if that is what they have to understand. When you get on and you talk ad infinitum about Tulsi Gabbard may decide to opt out. She is at what, 1% now?
She could help drive things more to the left by bringing things to the fore.
These are pie in the sky dreams. I'm talking about what are the practical things, which is all politics. Clean and sweep up your block.
Do that, but don't just do that and stop.
No, but look at the reality. She's at 1%. If she reached that high, she's at 1% now. It is incomprehensible to me that you would see that as being an advantageous position.
Clarify, please.
Huh?
What position? I mean, could you repeat that?
She's at 1% now. She's polling at 1%.
Do you know why?
I don't want to know why. I'm interested in this. These are the facts. This is the reality of her situation. She may be excellent. She may be the one. But right now, she's polling at 1%.
Why is Clinton attacking her?
I'm not interested in that. That's for Tulsi Gabbard to solve.
The only reason I bring her name up,
she has to defend herself. But she is still at 1%. Hillary Clinton is not doing all that well in the polls either. So they have to investigate what that number means and whether they do something about it or they ride this one through. I'm saying deal with politics where you can see possible results very quickly. You clean up your block, you'll see results very quickly. When people see grandma and granddad and young kids and everybody's cleaning up the block, it may not remain clean for long, but the idea sticks that people on this particular block have decided they need not live with garbage. And there you go from there. I just read the studio apartment, because Harlem has been taken over. A studio apartment in Harlem is now almost $2,000. People were saying, you see people saying, well, they're coming and taking over the neighborhood. Well, the neighborhood was there all along. Did you take care of it? Did you communicate an interest in where you live? No. That's the kind of politics we have to practice. And that brings us to the end of our program today. Thanks so much, everyone, for contributing. We return to this versions of this tomorrow. Bye-bye.